Yeah, I didn't really understand this question. How is he proving that he can win beyond Brady if he has Brady right now? So is the thought process that after Brady retires, because Brady's probably not going to retire for 3 years, which put Bill at 70.
But he isn't having a vintage Brady season. This is clearly a defense-dominated team.
I know. I mean, they played one team with a winning record and so far, and I know we're saying he's not winning because of the offense. There's a new left tackle. There's a new center. The right tackle last game or the right guard last game was a replacement. The tight end's brand new. He's got a bunch of receivers that have to wear name tags. So this is a situation where most quarterbacks, if they were thrust into it, wouldn't be able to operate at all, more or less operate as effectively as Tom has. And plus all the other stuff that Tom does in the locker room, all the legitimacy that Tom gives to the system that's in place there, that's not easily replaced at all.
Okay, so let's just simplify things. Let's put this out there. Let's say the Patriots win the Super Bowl this year, and Giselle finally wins the argument. Tom, you've been to 10, you've won 7. And he retires. Or, hey, he doesn't have a contract next year. For some reason or another, Tom Brady is not the quarterback of the New England Patriots next year. If that premise, your confidence level that Belichick doesn't have them in 14-2, but has them as the heavy favorites in the AFC East, double-digit wins, that they can continue to compete at a Patriot-esque, if not quite vintage Patriot level.
Yeah, this is the chicken and the egg argument. I think that Bill is great for Tom, and Tom is great for Bill. And maybe when Tom retires, from a legacy perspective, it might be time to move on, for Bill as well.
Wow.
But there's that situation where his kids are now working for him. He doesn't have any hobbies.
That's a big point.
So what's he going to do? Retire? He likes to play golf. He's going to play a couple rounds of golf and then be bored. So if he wants to see his kids now that they're in coaching, his best chance to see his kids is to remain in coaching. And it's going to be interesting to see how things operate without Tom Brady. We're talking about something that's been a constant and is such a force in that room from a legitimizing perspective. To lose that, yeah, it's going to be really fun and interesting to watch.
Stacey, you and I spoke early this morning, and I said, well, do you think Belichick could actually coach somewhere else? And you laid out all the reasons why that is virtually impossible at this point.
That's the least likely thing to happen besides retirement. I think retirement is, he's not going to do that. And then what is second least likely to do? Go somewhere else and coach. You can't have all the intel and all the bodies that he would need to move with him to do his system. Man, everything in New England is, they call it the Patriot way. It's Bill Belichick's way, all right? He created that system. They didn't have no system. How the players check in, how they come into the office, the times the meetings are, the practice schedule, the lack of lunchtime.
The videography, all of that.
That is all him. So the reason why I don't worry about him winning is because I know in coaching a game, there's thousands of things that the head coach is responsible for compared to the star quarterback. Now, yes, I know they've had continuity for 20 years, but Belichick is doing thousands of things that Brady has nothing to do with. And the reason why I like it is Belichick has gone through, I'm a defensive-dominated team, I'm going to run the ball, I'm going to shorten the clock, create turnovers on the defense, be conservative offensively. That won him 3 Super Bowls. Then he went wide open. I'm going to throw the ball, I'm going to move it down, I'm going to have mismatches along the field. That defense has been a lot like the offense is right now the last several years. Hodgepodge of guys, injuries. So he's been using his genius on the defense. Now it's just on the offense. So I know, just like Phil Jackson, people used to question, oh, can he win without Jordan? Of course, he's a great coach without Jordan. NBA is different than the NFL, but I just know the impact of a head coach it's just there's so many things that he does compared to a quarterback.
I think it's obvious that without each other, they wouldn't make the Super Bowl every other year. Because that's what they do. 9 Super Bowl appearances, 18 healthy years from Brady, because the one year he had his knee blown out. We know what the success is together. But I watch the NFL very closely every Sunday. It feels to me like there's less than 10 coaches in the league that don't regularly screw something up on Sunday where it's like, man, you just had too much on your plate. You either were calling plays and because that made you forget your time out there, or you got emotional and that made you throw your challenge flag at pass interference, even though everyone knows the league is 1 for the last 25 on those. If you watch the league every week, you know that if Bill Belichick were available on the trade market, if Jalen Ramsey's worth 2 first-round picks, what's Belichick worth? There's no salary cap on coaches. I know he's 67. Let's say he just is going to coach another 5 years. What is 5 years of elite coaching worth? Now, he's not going to be traded, and there's no reason for him to ever go anywhere because of the family stuff. Robert Kraft adores him. Like, of course, he will coach with the Patriots, I would imagine, until he's done coaching. But yes, he can win without Brady. Can they win Super Bowls without Brady? Well, we're going to have to see who comes in after Brady. They had a really good, viable replacement, maybe 2 of them. Not just Garoppolo, but also Jacoby Brissett. Right now they have Jared Stidham. We have no reason to believe he's the heir apparent. But of course, well, look at what Frank Reich is doing in Indy. Frank Reich has an argument that he is one of the best young coaches in football. They don't have a great quarterback. They have the former Patriots third stringer, and I like Jacoby. But they have a good roster, similar to the Patriots, and they have a head coach that knows exactly what he's doing that is incredibly valuable.
Well, look, he was worth a first-round draft pick before he won, so he'd be worth a lot more. One of the intriguing things, the only way I could ever see him leaving is maybe if he goes somewhere else as like the president or GM or gets an ownership interest in a team, and that's kind of the next phase. But
isn't he already the GM of the Patriots?
Well, but I'm saying a different structure, more like the Parcells type structure that Bill did later in his life. But it will be interesting to see how he operates without Brady in place, because it was one winning season in 6 years before Tom, but they have needed each other. They have complemented each other. To go get someone else to try to do the things that Tom does, it's hard. It's really, really hard. The concern is real because the opponents they have faced haven't presented a significant amount of challenges. But that being said, you can't take away what they have been able to achieve and the way that they've been able to achieve it in a dominant fashion. I think what you saw against Cleveland is some of their vulnerabilities. They gave up, it was like 6.1 yards a carry. And these teams are going to present challenges from a scheme perspective that you didn't see as much from these early opponents. The shifting and motioning and multiple personnel groups, that's the stuff that you want to do against New England because it's a rule-based defense. And we saw it in Stephon Gilmore's first year, the trouble that he had when it came to bunches and stacks, and he couldn't just line up on someone and play that guy. That's what you want to do. You want to get him to have to think and adjust and react to what you're doing, as opposed to sit back in these stationary formations and try to react to what they're doing, try to figure out what they're doing. That's not the way to do it. You got to no huddle, shifting, motioning, multiple personnel groups, challenging their rules all the time. That's how it's going to affect them defensively. And then offensively, I don't know how long they're going to be able to hold up with this offensive line group. Tom has been getting pressured a significant amount. And what you're seeing, too, is him vacating the pocket more than he has in a long time. Tom traditionally steps up in the pocket. He's had to move right and left because of some issues with the interior part. So that's going to be a difficult thing for them to overcome. And there's no help coming on the O-line unless they do something here at the trade deadline.
Well, it's so unique as far as what their schedule has been, because aside from the Buffalo game, it's been 8 straight games where they played bad offenses and bad defenses. Now, Pittsburgh has turned itself, as the season's gone on, into a better defense, but they were playing a lot of young guys. That week 1 Pittsburgh team was not the Pittsburgh team we've seen the last few weeks. But certainly over the last 7 weeks, it's Miami's bad on both sides of the ball. The Jets are bad on both sides of the ball. There's Buffalo as the outlier. Buffalo has an excellent defense, a really limited offense. That game was close. Washington's bad on both sides. The Giants, the Jets again, and Cleveland, we just talked about all the talent they have, but they're not producing. That is a list of 0, 1, or 2 win teams for a good reason. Over the next 4 weeks, they will play what would have been the best offense and the best defense they had played all season long, aside from the Buffalo game. So we will get to find out how great is the defense really. Because statistically, it's the best opening 8 games any team has ever had. That's not my opinion, that's a fact. That is, statistically, it is They are doing defensively what the 07 Pats offense did offensively through 8 games. Now, you look at the personnel and you say, how could this team be being more effective than the greatest defenses we've seen in the Super Bowl era? It has to be somewhat because of the competition, right? Has to be somewhat because of the quarterbacks they're facing. Because aside from Gilmore, do they have any superstars on the defense? Jamie Collins playing great. Dante Hightower is always a quality, highly productive player, but they don't have a guy that is a strike fear in the heart of the opposition defensive player. But the flip side is they also have played these bad defenses, and that's where the concern is for New England, because I don't think the offense has taken full advantage. People can say they have the #1, they're scoring the most points of any team in football, and they are, but they're average on yards per play. They're average on effectiveness and efficiency. It's short fields, it's turnovers, it's defensive and special team scores that's supplementing that points per game number that looks so gaudy and to me is misleading right now.
The defense, if you look at the quarterbacks outside of Ben Roethlisberger week #1 and Baker Mayfield in a rainstorm. So those numbers, to me, as far as the defense, are totally distorted. I've played in the last 30 years, I've played against a lot of the great defense, the 85, 86 Bears, Mike Singletary, Richard Dent, McMichael, they were stacked front end and the back end. Now, all those defenses, I can go to Tampa Bay, I can go to New York Football Giants, I can go to Baltimore Ravens, Ray Lewis. All those teams had one thing in common, New England. They didn't have a good offense. Their offense would keep you in the game. So for me, I think New England's offense, they're going to struggle all year. That's the reason why. Mohamed Sanu, you trade a second-round pick for him at the trade deadline. You bring AB off the scrap heap after what he had done in Oakland. Josh Gordon out of rehab. You wait a half a season for him? Really? It lets me know that there's going to be significant problems. And we know what they're doing from an offensive line standpoint as far as they're leaking oil on the left side. The center, Andrews, had to be replaced. And the right side, now they're starting to make adjustments on the right side. So you can see in Tom Brady, the way that he's playing, he's not comfortable. And as soon as he gives up on too many plays early. So it lets you know, I'm going to play to my defense, we'll punt, and we won't be able to lose. But this offense is going to have to be significantly better for them to remain undefeated, Coach.
How? Coach, how do you do that?
From an offensive standpoint?
Yeah.
Well, they're doing a great job with what they have. Remember, they also lost their fullback. They lost their starting kicker. I mean, you can see that some of the decisions they're making as to whether to kick a field goal, go for it on 4th down, have been affected by that
more aggressive.
By that kicker situation. And defensively, Julian Edelman's probably going to catch the ball if you play zone defense on him and don't take him away. Like, that's going to happen. And there's this other guy that have James White. He's probably going to catch the ball. Like, maybe you should cover those two guys and see if the rest of the team can beat you, similar to the way that New England does it to everybody else. You know, how are they going to get better offensively? They're going to get better offensively by knowing what their weaknesses are.
Identify their weaknesses.
And you can see that they'll bring the tight end over the left-hand side, and they'll chip with the left tackle to protect him. They'll bring the back. They'll do the same thing. They're going to compensate for weaknesses, and then they're just going to look and say, okay, here's your greatest weakness. We're going to attack it all day. And they just do it over and over and over again.
And they're not going to take a bunch of chances offensively. Tom has thrown interceptions, but they've been in the red zone. Now, people say, well, they take points off the board, but you got to drive 80 to be able to get some points. So they will identify the things that we can't do because we're not that team. I saw last week during a play, they had Ben Watson chip the left defensive end, and they had the wide receiver chip the right defensive end. I was like, my goodness, that's maximum protection. But more importantly, it's knowing that your offensive line is weak and knowing that if we get Tom Brady hit too many times, there won't be any Super Bowl aspirations. So they'll get better by knowing what they can't do.
And this is the antithesis of the Browns. It's an egoless offense. Everybody's willing to play a role to be successful, and they're willing to be boring, too. If you're going to give them 10 hitches, they'll take 10 hitches. Like, you got to change things up and challenge them as opposed to just let them decide how the game's going to operate.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.